Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you want more daily health education, be sure to follow us on Instagram, which is filled with health optimization how-tos, grocery shopping lists, guided breathwork posts, myth debunking, and so much more. You can find us at Wild Health MD on Instagram. What's up, Carl?
Not much, man, other than it's pouring rain here, and it doesn't feel right because I feel like it should be pouring rain where you're at, not where I'm at.
Yeah, well, you missed the bulletin. It's summer came early in Portland, which means that it's June and it's sunny outside. It's kind of amazing.
It's weird. It's Colorado and rainy, which is usually sunny this time of year. The high mountains.
Well, it's nice to share the love, give you some lousy weather for a change. You know, I think I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you because I feel like we were pretty Debbie Downer about chocolate when we did the podcast a couple months back on just like all the lead and cadmium and the other heavy metals that are floating around in chocolate. And it's like it felt like the pendulum needed to swing the other way and do something positive.
It's inspired me to do this because I felt like I really I don't know, just punished you a little bit. It was just a little kind of a mean friend, mean Carl. Came out and bad Carl, but now I'm trying to help you
it's like you told me that Santa wasn't real, but now you're still giving me a Christmas present. So it's cool. Let's go for it. So yes, Carl, in answer to your initial question before we even got on, I do like chocolate, and I've heard that it's pretty good for you. And give me the reasons why I should get past my fear of heavy metals and dive. Well, hold on. Spoiler alert. I didn't stop eating chocolate after that last podcast.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think you would. That wasn't my assumption. I just was trying to sprinkle in a little self-loathing while you did that.
Fantastic.
Oh, I shouldn't be doing this.
I'm so naughty.
Yeah, I'm so bad. So cocoa is it's a principal ingredient in chocolate, and it derived from the cacao tree, and it's really rich in polyphenols and particularly flavonoids. Now, there's a lot of different types of flavonoids, but it's particularly high in the type of flavonoids that are associated with a wide range of health benefits and effects with consumption of these. So a lot of these we can kind of list them out, and we'll talk about them individually, and then we'll kind of go through them and try and touch on each one a little bit. So improve endothelial function and lowering your blood pressure. There is some evidence that maybe it lowers your lipids, or improves your cholesterol, lowers your bad cholesterol, your LDL or ApoB. And with those risks, you get a reduction in cardiovascular disease. There's actually some data around increased blood flow to your skin, and that results in better protection against sun damage, which is pretty interesting. That was one I didn't know. And then you get this sort of enhanced blood flow to your brain, but there's also performance benefits. There's studies around exercise performance benefits that are kind of fun to look at and kind of worth, I think, a look. So let's talk about the effects on blood pressure. So when we talk about blood pressure and consumption of flavonoids or cocoa, right? So people get a sustained drop in their blood pressure that's actually over 8 hours after consumption. And what they think this is due is people get this drop pretty quick after consumption, and we're talking mild blood drop, so 1 to 5 points drop in their systolic blood pressure. So not huge, but it's there. But it gets sustained, and then actually you get kind of another bump and another bump after over an 8-hour period. And they think this is because of bacterial metabolism of flavonoids in your gut, and then you get the release of byproducts kind of over time. And so you get this slow, steady, reduction of your blood pressure over time. and we talk about, 10 points in your blood pressure. If you're sitting at, if you're 125 over 85 and not over 120 over 80, that actually is significant. And if you're doing some lifestyle things to try and avoid medications for blood pressure management, it's significant, because blood pressure is one of those things where it's sort of a physics thing. Once you hit this threshold, then you start to have the mechanical effect on your blood pressure, on your blood vessel wall, that then results in endothelial damage, and then that can lead to atherosclerosis and sort of downstream negative effects. So that actual drop is actually kind of significant and pretty cool, and it's nice that it's steady over time.
You're telling me basically that it's like Tony's Chocolate-Only XR.
XR.
You're getting like extended release chocolate. Sounds
right.
pretty amazing.
And
is it all like nitric oxide? Like what's the mechanism that you're getting like vasodilation and endothelial function improvement?
Yeah, they're thinking that a lot of this is actually, as opposed to like beet juice powder, which works through a different mechanism, because it's actually high in nitrates, which converts to nitric oxide. What flavonoids are found in dark chocolate, we think they do is they actually increase the nitric oxide bioavailability, so it's working a different mechanism, but through nitric oxide that is having this effect, which I think it's kind of cool. Like, you could work on it two different ways, right? You could, if you have your borderline and your blood pressure, one of the things I'll recommend to people is beet juice powder if they're like, we're trying to do lifestyle modifications and not adding medications, beet juice powder, and then I'll have them do, add some flavonoids, and they can get a couple points reduction. And then you add a little sauna into that, and then you just slowly knock away, just chopping away at that tree, buddy.
Yeah, throw down with a little bit of ground flaxseed, and
man.
We all of a sudden we've got a way tastier, gut healthy version of hydrochlorothiazide.
Yeah, exactly. Hydrochlorothiazide.
So tasty.
So tasty. So the other thing is, when you look at peripheral vascular disease, this is where people have narrowing of the arteries that go to their extremities, specifically their lower extremities usually. There's actually studies that show with flavonoids, with chocolate, cocoa flavonoids reducing, or how should I say this? They're actually, if they give these people these beverages with cocoa in it for 6 months, they show a marked improvements in their ability to walk. So what happens with people, if they have decreased blood flow to their lower extremities, when they walk, they get pain because they have that decreased blood flow to their muscles. Excuse me, and then that results in some pain for them. And so what they do is they show patients having increased ability to walk, and then they actually do like muscle biopsies and look at they have improved mitochondrial function and improved blood flow, and they have improved capillary density as well, which is pretty crazy, right? And some of that function is through nitric oxide, and probably and also signaling pathways that result in increased mitochondrial density, which we've talked about before.
Yeah, any study that tells me that hot chocolate is medicine is a study that I can stand behind. I don't care what the quality of the evidence is. I don't care if there was confounding. I believe this study because I want to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think like there's hot chocolate and then there's like powdered sugar with chocolate in it.
It's got to be high quality hot cocoa. All right, we're not going Swiss Miss over here with the mini marshmallows.
Oh, I feel like I'm at no association with Swiss Miss. I have no relationship. I hope they're not mad at me. I don't know. The Swiss Miss Gestapo is gonna come after me. I don't know, or after you. Really, that's
probably me. Yeah, it's on me. I'll own it.
That's right. So, and then there's actually effects around mental health and cognitive health. So when they have like healthy adults consuming cocoa, and that contains L-theanine and other amino acids with it as well, their blood pressure improves, but also they show this increased brain activity and increased like arousal activity in their brains, and they end up having cognitive improvement on performance testing, which I think is pretty impressive. One of the other things that I think is crazy is there's this study out of the International Society of Sports Nutrition. It was out of 2015, where these researchers looked at cyclists and performance on time trials. And they did these, different length time trials, and they took groups and they actually did crossover. They did a crossover design in their study where they take people, they give them cocoa flavonoids, and they test them on they look at their VO2 max, and they also specifically look at their distance that they covered in a 2-minute time trial. So a HIIT workout, essentially, just as pushing it as hard as you can for 2 minutes. And they showed that the control was the white chocolate. They gave them white chocolate, which I think is, I don't know, it's like hilarious to me.
Sugar.
Like control is sugar, yeah. So they give dark chocolate, and their distance, the difference in distance in these two patients averaged over the crossover was 300 meters longer in a 2-minute time trial. So, which is like, there's other studies that suggest this. I just found this study to be like, holy crap. They had a 14-day washout period between, it was a 7-day washout period where they like waited 7 days and did it again. And then, and then they also had changes in, they looked at their baseline VO2 max and measured before. They did a 20-minute ride, which didn't show significant differences. It tended towards the people who had the cocoa flavonoids, but the 2-minute trial was it was a 17% increase, which I thought was like,
that's
pretty
nuts.
Bonkers to me. Yeah.
So, that's really impressive.
So that was kind of like the brief thing I wanted to talk about cocoa flavonoids. I will say, that if you're going to look at brands, it would be important to look at lead and cadmium concentrations. There are companies. I don't know can we do this? Can we say specific companies?
Sure. Why not?
So there's this company Cocovia that does a powder that they don't exactly publish like what their concentrations of lead and cadmium are, but people have studied this independently and shown that they're low. They have a proprietary process through extraction of cadmium and lead, which I don't really know what that is, which always makes me nervous when I don't know something is. But then they have their own like studies they do on things. But there's been repeated studies and replicated studies of what they have done for their cocoa flavonoid, and I think it's overall a pretty good product. That's one I would like. I don't know if I want to endorse. I don't really endorse anything except for love.
Yeah, but
love. I endorse love.
But I think it's a good, without getting you too much on the product placement line of things, because I can sense your general discomfort with even talking about a brand that you like, which that's okay, Carl. You can talk about a brand that you like. I think like every medicine, the proof is in the dose. Right. So, yes, if you're getting just, a word of caution, because, what I'd like to believe from the information you just gave me is that I should be eating a lot more chocolate than I'm eating.
Yeah, thanks.
But the reality is, like, yes, lead and cadmium, you got to make sure that your sources are good and that you're not getting too much heavy metals. You also, like, keep in mind that a lot of the chocolate that is marketed and out there and sold has added sugars and may have a high concentration of saturated fat, and depending on what your goals are, your current health status, your degree of insulin resistance or dyslipidemia, like this may not be something that becomes a real like heavy staple in your diet, but I think that that it does give me some hope that that I'm gonna be thinking of cocoa as a health food in general, as opposed to thinking of it as poison, which is what you did to me after our last podcast on chocolate.
And I think if we're going to warn people, like also like dark chocolate at night, so there's caffeine, but there's also theobromine in it, which will keep people awake and disrupt their sleep, disrupt their deep sleep and shorten their deep sleep. And that's like a thing. And so that's also like caution. And I appreciate you bringing caution to my discussions, but really I brought this because of you and because of what else I endorse, because of love for you. I endorse love.
Well, you knew that your warnings wouldn't stop me from eating chocolate, and in fact they didn't, although I will say that they did inform my brand choices after looking through the testing that was done, and they also informed my cacao concentration choices. So I was generally like an 80% kind of like super, super dark. And I've kind of backed off into like the 55% range, which is still dark chocolate, but doesn't have as high concentration statistically of lead or cadmium. So still informative. You didn't break my heart, Carl. You just kind of wounded me for a little bit.
All right. Well, I do love you. All right, man.
Likewise, bro. All right. Listen, thanks for this. And the next chocolate podcast better be positive. That's all I got to say.
It will.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you found it helpful, give us a 5-star rating and write a review on iTunes. It really helps the podcast, and we greatly appreciate it. If you want to be a client or you want to work with us, go to wildhealth.com. Thanks again.